Hello all YouTubers, I am the Weather Dude. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for tuning back into this weather presentation for June 2nd, 2020. Before I get on with today's video, however, I would ask that you please do subscribe because sadly, tons of my watch time has been coming from unsubscribed viewers. We are on our way to our next goal of 600 subscribers, and thank you guys so much, by the way, for 500 subscribers. Let's get to our next goal of 600 subscribers, alright? So please do subscribe, and also, this applies to every single one of you, please watch the whole video as well as liking and sharing the video. Thank you. Now let's get on with today's video. So for today's video, we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Cristobal and how it could form into a potentially a hurricane. All right, we're going to have to watch it closely. So let's get right into it here. So this is the storm track of Tropical Storm Cristobal. And it is now Tropical Storm, obviously, winds of 40 miles per hour. And its current storm, or the current low center, which is right about here, it's going to do a loop, make landfall, possibly turn back into a depression, and then race towards the north as a strong tropical storm, possibly a hurricane. But it's going to be sitting around up until like Friday afternoon. It won't even start leaving until late Friday into Saturday morning. All right, there's already tropical storm warnings along the Mexican coastline. All right, but tropical storm, the winds won't be that strong, but the rainfall will be very, very heavy. We're talking about over 15 inches of rain possibly. So deadly flooding has already occurred in Guatemala, El Salvador. All right, and Mexico could see more of the same. All right, so light-threatening flash flooding, tropical storm force winds, and Cristobal is forecast to move northward through the Gulf of Mexico on Friday. There can be storm surge, a low amount as of now, but still some storm surge, rainfall, and wind impacts. All right, so from Texas to Florida, it's quite uncertain where the exact impacts will be at this point. Look at the surface wind field. There is wind history in that orange there of tropical storm force winds embedded within that orange region, and here is where the storm was before. That's your past track, so it's kind of curved around a little bit, and it's going to eventually turn north, but it's going to do that very, very slowly here, sitting in the Bay of Campeche here. Again, tropical storm warnings along the Mexican coastline. And if we look here at the interactive map is nice because it'll tell you exactly how strong the winds will be, not just D or S, your depression or storm. So it'll come on shore, maybe have some 35-mile-an-hour winds, and once it departs, heads back into the water, 40-mile-an-hour winds, 45, and eventually by 2 p.m. Eastern time on June 7th, it could potentially be a near hurricane. Hurricane force wind gusts, but not hurricane force sustained winds. And obviously, you need the sustained winds of hurricane force to have a hurricane, not just wind gusts. So sustained winds will be at 65 miles per hour with wind gusts of 75 miles per hour. And if we look at the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds, again, it may not even, like, if it does get to the Gulf Coast, probably like late Saturday. That'll be the earliest reasonable time, probably during the day Sunday. All right, and today is Tuesday. I've lost my sense of time completely, guys. All right, so we're talking about not Saturday the 6th and Sunday the 7th. We're talking about, well, yes, the 7th, but then after that. All right, so this could be like a whole nother week. So there's a lot of time is going to pass before this starts to impact land, besides Mexico. So tropical storm force wind probabilities here. All right, so let me just change my color here to black. And as this moves north, you can kind of see the cone here. As the storm moves north, that's where your best chance of tropical storm force winds will be. There is a chance as of now, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, but that could change. It could move east, it could move west, but the latest track, it just had it shift a little bit west. Now, whether it goes to the Western Gulf, Eastern Gulf, not really going to be much different. But you can see here is your hurricane hunters. All right, your hurricane hunters. And before we look at that, however, oops, sorry about that, guys. Let's first look at the current low placement. And here you can see it's over the water still. All right, and because it is over the water, all right, it's got a chance to strengthen more because obviously if it hits land, then it's going to start to weaken a little bit. Now here's Cristobal. Here's the model tracking guidance. Again, a lot of the models do drop it into Mexico for a little bit, but then eventually shoot it back north in several different directions. However, most of the models are indicating that it will make landfall in either Texas or Louisiana, similar to Tropical Storm Cindy. It impacted in pretty much the same region. So a lot of the models, except one, are agreeing on a track here. All right. And as of the strength, all the models are, or at least the GEFS ensemble tracks, they are pretty much all indicating a strong tropical storm. Pressures of 990 to 1,000 millibars there, indicated by those yellow lines. Obviously, when it drops south into Mexico, it's going to start to weaken between 1,000 and 1,005 millibars, and then eventually strengthen as it heads north. I think it could possibly strengthen a little bit more than this because of the atmospheric conditions. The only thing that's keeping this thing from developing is going to be the shear. All right, so here is the storm sitting in the Bay of Campeche here, and as this moves north, all right, into Louisiana, it could strengthen potentially. Again, winds of 990 to 1,000 millibars. So this storm could has some pretty strong winds. And a couple models do indicate a 980 to 990 millibars of pressure. All right, only 2 models do that. And obviously that would mean even stronger winds. But again, most models on a GEPS tracks do indicate 990 to 1,000 millibars of pressure and moving up through Louisiana. Now the intensity guidance, again, storm strength is a little bit more as it continues to stay in the Bay of Campeche, or Campeche, whatever you want to call it. Then it weakens as it hits land, and then the models say a re-strengthening. Okay, only one model makes it a hurricane. I think what a lot of the models think, and what I do think, is that a strong end tropical storm winds of 55 to 65 miles an hour or so. This could change, but that is the most likely outcome at this point. But again, still, I mean, decently strong tropical storm can still produce decently high storm surge values. Obviously, if it stalls out, which it won't, but we can still have some problems. Right, so here is the latest aircraft reconnaissance data, and they have found for a peak 10-second average of flight level wind speed, they have found 45 to 50 knots of wind, which is about 50 to 55 miles an hour. So in the next NHC update, this could be 45 or 50 mile an hour sustained wind because sometimes these are a little bit high end. So I'd say in the next update, excuse me, in the next update from the NHC coming at 8 o'clock most likely, this storm could have sustained winds of 45 to 50 miles an hour instead of 40 right now. Again, they're finding some higher or lower pressures, I should say. 1,004 millibars right at the center there. And here's your deep convection. That's where your strongest winds are currently. So that's something we're going to be watching. As well as some of the aircraft observations that we found. All right, if you take a look at the temperature and the dew point, the relative humidities are very high because the temperature, all right, and the dew point are very close to each other. You can see the lines are too far apart. We look at the top right here, the SFMR wind speed and rain rate. Look at the surface winds. We have found surface winds of passing 35 knots, which is obviously tropical storm force. We could find some higher winds than that, obviously, depending on how they fly around in the storm system. But they have found rainfall rates at different times, 10, 12 millimeters an hour. That's like over a half inch of rain an hour, which I've seen a lot stronger, but that is still a lot. Half inch of rain an hour, especially because this thing is stalled out. A half inch of rain every hour is a lot of rainfall. Now, here's a ship diagnostic message. Again, you see me use this a lot if you've been watching my tropical coverage videos. And we start with the shear here, all right? Look at the storm, or the wind shear, I should say. Look how low it is. It doesn't really get above 20 until we get about maybe 6 days out, a week out, maybe get into the 20s, which is still not bad. But wind shear right now is very low, which is good for development. SST is 29 for the next 24 hours, which is well into the 80s. We could even hit 30, which is in the upper 80s, 30 degrees Celsius. They're upper 80s in terms of water temperature by 48 hours out. And then the waters will get slightly cooler as it heads through the Gulf of Mexico. But still, I think the whole time it's going to be in pretty much the whole time. This will be in waters of 80 degrees plus, which is plenty enough for development. In terms of storm speed on the bottom, towards the second the bottom of your screen, yeah, it's only moving at about 1-2 knots here. That's basically nothing. Obviously, towards the end of the storm's life cycle, it's going to start to speed up a little bit as it heads through the Gulf. 5-7 days out potentially. Heat content has gone up recently. All right, we're going to see some higher heat content values. 24 to 72 hours out. Obviously, that will weaken as it heads through the Gulf of Mexico because obviously we know the Bay of Campeche does have more heat content than the rest of the Gulf. So here's the HWRF. We're going to start because Miles really gave me a hard time last time, and hopefully it's not doing that now. And here's the HWRF. Again, look at this. Just moving to the north, a Texas, Louisiana landfall here with 986 millibars of pressure. Again, very high rainfall rates according to the HWRF model, and that is about as far out as it goes. All right, so there's your HWRF model. How strong do the winds get? That is going to be a good question. That is a good question, and the HWRF does say we could have winds of 55 knots. All right, when the storm makes its way onshore, which is well above 60 mile an hour, about 62 mile an hour winds, right there on the northeast side of that storm, where that's usually where we have the strongest winds. So we get 60 mile an hour winds driving water onshore, plus very heavy rainfall. That's going to lead to a dangerous threat. This is the HWRF, this is the HWRF parent, and I like it because it's a little more zoomed out, yet it still focuses in on the storm. So here's the storm stalling out. Again, it might not leave the Bay of Campeche until, maybe early Saturday. Then the storm moves up to the north and east. And again, just the same here, 55 knots of wind is still a lot of wind. All right, which can drive a lot of that rainfall on shore, or excuse me, drive a lot of the ocean water on shore. Here's the H-mod. Again, the storm starts to make landfall in Mexico. All right, I mean, Mexico is just getting demolished by heavy rainfall here. I mean, at least 12 inches we're talking about, including the rainfall we've already gotten. And even additional 5 inches plus is possible. Then the storm starts to move through the Gulf of Mexico, and as far out as this model goes, does indicate a near landfall in Louisiana there eventually, if it could go out a little bit further. But look at this very heavy band of rain to the west side of that storm system. So a lot of rain and a lot of wind too. Decent amount of wind. All right, it did have at one point peak winds of 56.2 knots right there on the east-southeast side of that storm. But the low is a little bit dysfunctional. Right? We do have this almost looks like a subtropical low. I don't think it will be that, but you can kind of see how it kind of wraps in like this. It's kind of like a subtropical low. Also, where they put the low center is not quite where the lowest amount of wind is, so it's not like a completely organized system, but I think it's definitely good enough for a developing tropical storm. Look at the GFS. Look at the heavy rainfall that's going to be coming into Mexico. That is absolutely crazy. We're seeing magentas on the radar here, which means absolutely catastrophic rainfall rates. It moves into Mexico, and the GFS for some reason just doesn't. It just plays around with the storm, and then it eventually just moves it into the northern Gulf. But look at this. Look at that magenta, widespread magenta here. 30 to 42 millimeters of rain every hour. All right, that's like inches upon inches of rain every single hour here. All right, and as it moves to the north, there's your landfall at 997. But GFS doesn't, even though they don't make the wind quite that strong, they definitely ramp up the rainfall big time here. So indicating GFS about 50 mile an hour winds with that tropical storm. All right, but let's go back. Let's go to the southeast or actually the western Atlantic, because I do want to show you how much rainfall the GFS actually put on this, because the GFS puts a lot of rainfall here. So the storm moves in, it's out of the way, potentially by late next week, and look at the rainfall we have. An additional 6 to 10 plus for Mexico, even 6 inches for the Florida coastline, for the Alabama coastline, 6 inches of rainfall. So very deadly rainfalls right out of this potentially. Here's the GEM model. All right, here's a GEM model, moves to the north. 996 millibars of pressure, very heavy rain coming on shore late Sunday into Monday. Still kind of slow, then it kind of combines. Storms remnants move up. We got a front here, so it's going to help to enhance some thunderstorm activity. Okay, let's also zoom out so we can see the rainfall and total precipitation according to the GEM model. A lot, even more than the GFS had. We're talking about 6 to 10 for Mississippi, Alabama coastline, Appalachia Bay, maybe 6 to 10 inches plus. Potentially 6 to 12 inches for the Mexican coastline there and the Yucatan Peninsula. I was trying to think of the name there. And here's the European model. All right, European model is very interesting, right? Because the rainfall comes through with landfall in Louisiana of 979 millibars of pressure. So that is a lot of wind there, very low pressure. However, if you look at the winds, even though they had the low pressure, they didn't have the winds that strong. Even though the pressure is some of the lowest I've seen out of all the models, because a lot of the models are calling for 990 to 1,000 millibars pressure, high-end tropical storm. This one, the Europeans got 979 millibars of pressure and only about 50 mile an hour winds. But the wind that you do get is going to be a lot stronger than you think it might be. All right, so there's a European model prediction, and if we go to the total rainfall, let's just wait for this thing to load. Again, rainfall could be a lot. All right, if you look at the coastline here, I mean, we're talking about over the water, over 10 inches, but even without that, 6 inches, Mississippi, Louisiana, down through the coast of Florida. So that's something we're going to have to keep our eyes on, guys. So stay tuned for more coverage. I'm the Weather Dude, signing off. Till next time. Catch you guys next video.